Welcome to panel 16 of the third International Conference on Cordillera Studies with the theme Indigenous Peoples and Sustainable Development Goals. The sub-theme of panel 16 is collaborative innovations in indigenous communities. We have two presentations for this panel. And before I introduce the presenters, let me just start with a brief introduction of myself and the reminders for this session. My name is Orville B. Tacho, faculty of the Department of Communication at the University of the Philippines, Baguio, and I will be your moderator. With me is Sir Jeffrey Javier as the assistant moderator. So if you have concerns, you may chat either Sir Jeffrey or myself so that we can accommodate them. Okay, we have a very good fairly good number of people here in the Zoom room. We have 18 participants, and we have people watching via YouTube as well. With that being said, let me introduce the first presenters for this session. Okay, Ryan C. Ginaran is a medical doctor and community development or development management specialist with interest in Indigenous people's health, health systems strengthening, and health communication. He is a PhD candidate in rural development at the Benguet State University in La Trinidad, Benguet, Philippines. The co-author of the first presentation is Paul Joseph A. Noval. He is an educator at the College of Agriculture, Department of Development Communication, Benguet State University. His research interests are development, communication and media studies, rural development, and indigenous knowledge systems. He is a PhD candidate in rural development at the Benguet State University in La Trinidad, Benguet, Philippines. So the title of Ryan and Paul's presentation is Positioning Our Purpose, Communicating Health Through Nutrisquela Community Radio.
Good day. We are Ryan Ginaran and Paul Joseph Noval to report on the study Positioning Our Purpose, Communicating Health Through Nutrisquela Community Radio in Ifugao, Philippines. Effective health communication is central to the attainment of better health outcomes in communities, especially in underserved areas, by ensuring health literacy. Health communication emphasizes combining theory and practice in understanding communication processes in changing human behavior. Unlike other media types such as newspapers, radio stations have become reliable sources of information in areas where information dissemination is limited. Airwaves can be searched even when phone lines are cut and the internet is blocked. The Nutrisquela Community Radio Network of the National Nutrition Council was engendered out of a need for a long-term and cost-effective strategy to address the problem in malnutrition in the Philippines through the use of radio, which is the most available form of mass media. The Nutrisquela Community Radio Network program involves the setting up of non-profit, non-partisan community radio stations and training of broadcast personnel in areas of the country with high malnutrition prevalence and which do not have easy access to broadcast media. Radyo Kipodan, or in the local language, progress or development, was established in 2008 by the National Nutrition Council in partnership with the municipal government of Lagawe, Ifugao, under Phase 1 of the Nutrisquela Community Radio Network program. At the time of its establishment, the prevalence of underweight among preschool children in the locality was 4.57%. This field report was done as a course requirement in technology assessment in rural development and was conducted in May 2018. To uphold the technological assessment in the course of analyzing health communication in this case, the study looked into health communication programming as information provision and radio production administration as the technology. The study aimed to document the practices and assess the community's health outcomes through 99.1 Radyo Kipodan, the National Nutrition Council's Nutrisquela Community Radio Network in Lagawi, Ifugao. Specifically, the study aimed to describe the health programs of Radyo Kipodan, characterize the production process of the Radyo Kipodan, assess the performance of Radyo Kipodan based on the National Nutrition Council monitoring tool, and identify the benefits of the radio programs to the community. The descriptive approach is used mainly to describe contemporary events, and that the research questions and problems are appreciation of the present state of affairs. Interviews, observation, review documents were employed, and data analysis were through media analysis and thematic analysis. For our results and discussion, as to the radio formats, Radyo Kipodan continuously airs through six formats, and these are news programs and broadcasts, which are being aired in the morning at noontime and in the afternoon. Popularly known as local news updates in the community, the news reports are gathered from the different offices in the provincial and municipal level. These reports are only given by concerned offices but not written popularly by the broadcasters. This means that whatever reports coming from the offices are, these are being aired without processing or synthesizing. The second is musical program. This recorded the highest time slot in the program lag of the community radio. It utilizes 60% of the total time allotment daily. The third is magazine program, which is being utilized as a format in Radio Kipodan. This is through the partnership of the station with the different agencies and experts on the field. Also, these are the programs spearheaded by different municipal offices. The other formats are panel discussions, which are incorporated in the magazine programs, and panel interviews. Radio plugs also, such as mini drama, jingle, and straight narration. Public service announcements are also aired for community welfare and engagements. As to health programs, there are at least three particular programs in the Nutri-Escuela community radio that's being cascaded by the National Nutrition Council. These are Katumbas ay Biyaya, One Nutrition, One Nation program, and the 10 Kumain Ments. Health-initiated programs are also being developed and aired in the community radio. These health-initiated programs are spearheaded by the Municipal Health Office of Lagawe through their program MHO Live. Also, the Municipal Nutrition Action Office, through its barangay nutrition scholars and barangay health workers, air the program Nutrition sa Barangay, a live program to maximize communication channels on malnutrition cases and strategies to solve the issue. Cooking recipes are also an initiated program of the community radio. Apart from the health programs, the community radio is also utilized to air and communicate development programs of the municipality. Out of 33 listed programs, 29 of which are issues on peace and order by the Philippine National Police and Bureau of Fire Protection, disaster risk reduction by the provincial and municipal disaster risk reduction councils, youth leadership and empowerment by the POPCOM or the Provincial Population and Sustainable Development Office, government programs, projects, and activities by the LGU and Sangguniang Bayan, employment opportunities by PESO and DTI, education matters by DepEd and TESDA, social welfare and development by the Provincial Social Welfare Development Office and the Municipal Social Welfare Development Office, and religious and spiritual formation by various church sectors. The NNC operational guidelines state that the target programming of the Nutri-Escuela Community Radio is 60% development programs, while 40% music and entertainment programs. In the case of Radyo Kipodan, they operate from 5:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily, which has then a total of 101 hours and 30 minutes per week. This means that 60% should be dedicated for development programs, or 60 hours and 54 minutes, while 40 hours and 36 minutes should be for music and entertainment. However, through the analysis of the program log of Radyo Kipodan, it was found out that only 44 hours and 30 minutes, or 44%, is dedicated for development programs, and 62.8 hours and 18 minutes are allotted for the music and entertainment. This gives programming in this gives the programming higher time allotment for music, contrary to what NNC is targeting. Of the total hours per week, only 8 hours and 30 minutes, equivalent to 8%, is dedicated for health and nutrition programs. In the assessment of the production process, the study made use of tabing and osala as the basis of participatory communication in the development of community radio programs and the P process in the development of health communication campaign. So the planning phase of the Rajakipodan is being upheld during the consultative meetings with the Community Radio Council. However, during the CRC, they only discuss the involvement of resource persons in the airing and discussion and production of the radio programs. Other notable facts about the planning process is that it's centralized to the top management, such as the CRC and the radio staff. There's also a lack of grounding and research, such as situational analysis and strategic design, to target the information needs of the community. Further, the study found out that invited resource speakers have the independence to decide on what radio format they will be using during the programming. As to the production process, the invited resource speakers have the decision on the format to follow, communication flow, styles in airing, content of the topic, and delivery of the topic. And these resource speakers are mostly heads of offices or representatives from municipal health offices or agricultural health offices or environment, tourism, and disaster and other offices. Anchors and speakers broadcast in the absence of message outline, script outline, and module then. As to evaluation, Rajakipodan is evaluated by the community radio. It is in this regard that community participation is very visible through the presence of feedback mechanisms such as open portals, text lines, and online platforms. Feedback is being received by the anchors. Three outputs are seen in terms of the operations management. These are one, sustained Radio Nutri-Eskwela operations that improves people's access to information and nutrition-related concerns. Second, increased flow of accurate information to and within the community through information formulation and dissemination. And third, increased participatory community development. As to the reach of programming, Radyo Kipodan is accessible in 16 of the 20 barangays of Lagawe. As to listenership, a survey done by Radyo Kipodan in 2014 noted that about 78% of the barangays or of those respondents that were surveyed were reached by the radio signals and they tuned into Nutri Eskwela. The effects of Nutri Eskwela community radio to the community are vast. Politically, it's a model for nonpartisan public service. It is common knowledge that the Radyo Nutri-Eskwelas are nonpartisan public service media platforms and politicians respect the rule. Even if politicians donate to the radio, no conditions are set by the former. Health also is elevated as a priority issue in the locality, and LGU priorities and services are made accessible through the radio. Economically, the setting up of alternative food sources like vegetable gardens have been encouraged by the radio. Listeners are also able to do real-time price monitoring of food and other commodities as this is being provided by the radio station. The station also has become an entertainment source to ward off boredom aside from provision of health information, more specifically on nutrition. In its management, there is multi-sectoral participation and many partnerships have been forged. Also, multiple voices from underrepresented groups are now possible to be heard from indigenous peoples, elders, youth and students, farmers, women, and other sectors. Technologically, real-time mass communication is now possible in the locality, and health and other technological products are promoted. Mobile cell phones are also now being used as radio, allowing access to information while doing work in various places. Licenses, business permits, especially in food businesses, are explained and reminded through the community radio. Environmental sanitation and food safety is more known because of the radio. In conclusion, there are at least 6 formats being utilized by the Rajakipodan. However, community radio has not been fully utilized or maximized in terms of communicating health programs to the community. The 60% 40% allotment for health and development programs and entertainment was not observed during the time of the visit. Community production community radio production process is centralized and utilizes the top-down approach at present. No local materials have been developed by the municipality, and contextualization of information is done by resource speakers. Community radio management is multisectoral. It has broad involvement of many government and community stakeholders in management and in programming. Also, development benefits for the community has been derived from the operation of the community radio. Access to information, especially in local matters, are made real time. Some recommendations are the production of localized health programs, circulation coverage, and listenership strategies may be implemented. Project planning and evaluation should be concretized. Strategic plans with projected targets and indicators may be helpful as the radio station levels up after a decade of operations. Communication is multisectoral, but it should be more intersectoral, and participation in communication may be implemented to ensure community resilience, thus solving information and process gaps. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Sir Ryan and Sir Paul, for your presentation on the importance of community radio to health and development outcomes. Now, again, we will entertain your questions. If you have any, you are free to type them up in the chat box so that we can ask the presenters your questions later at the end of this session. Okay. We will now proceed to the second presentation for this session, and the title of that presentation is to put the participants' perspective ahead, organizing workshop of intergenerational transfer of knowledge with the Ibaloy of Upper Luwakan, Itogon. Now, there are 4 authors for this paper, and let me introduce each of them briefly. The first is Antoine Logran. He is a PhD candidate in anthropology at the Université Catholique de Lubon. His research focuses on indigenous representations of space and mapping in the Cordillera, Mindoro, and Mindanao. He has published as an author and co-author of several papers on Laan, Alangan, Ibaloy, and Aita knowledge, rituals, and practices in the Philippines. The second co-author is Frédéric Logron, a professor at the Université Catholique de Lubon. His research interests include indigenous peoples' cosmologies, knowledge, and shamanism practices. He worked with the Inuit of the Canadian Arctic during 25 years. Since 2012, he also worked with several indigenous communities in the Philippines. He has published several monographs on Inuit conversion to Christianism and co-edited multiple books of verbatims in indigenous languages, as well as their translation in English. The third co-author is Bliceria Magapin, who is an Ibaloy speaker and translator from Tocmo Sabgil, Upper Luwakan, Itogon, working for the preservation of the history and traditions of her community. He co-edited 3 volumes of verbatims on Ibaloy culture and traditions in English and Nabaloy, as well as a film on their funerals. Finally, the fourth co-author of the presentation or paper is Jazil Tama, who is an Ibaloy speaker and translator from Tocmo Sabgil, Upper Luwakan, Itogon, working for the preservation of the history and traditions of her community. He co-edited 3 volumes of verbatims on Ibaloy culture and traditions in English and Nabaloy, as well as a film on death funerals. Again, the title of the second presentation is To Put the Participants' Perspective Ahead, Organizing Workshop of Intergenerational Transfer of Knowledge with the Ibaloy of Upper Luwakan, Itogon. Let's all listen to this presentation.
This paper explores the methodology that we developed as a collaborative team composed by 2 anthropologists, Antoine Logrand and myself, Frédéric Logrand, and 2 Ibaloy speakers who became, in the process, anthropologists themselves, within their own community. We argue that such collaborative work is rich for ethnography and useful for any research. It creates a new dynamic for joint research with indigenous people and foreigners in a very original and, we believe, very fruitful perspective. The activities took place in 2017, 2018, and 2019. They were recorded, then published in Nabaloy and translated into English for a total of 6 books in the 2 languages. The workshops included sharing stories and rituals performed on site. The volumes were given to the participants as well as to the 50 schools of Itogon who planned to use them for educational purposes. The event was also featured by an article of the 2019 International Year of Indigenous Languages in the Philippines. The Ibaloy of Luacan inhabit a barangay of Itogon in the southern portion of the province of Benguet, which is next to Baguio City. Although they practice terrace farming, they also mine gold on a small scale, having traded this metal with the Chinese, the Spanish, and the Americans over the years. The community of Upper Luacan is mostly Catholic, but other denominations are present, such as the Evangelical Church. The group we stayed with had long ago been evangelized by the missionary sisters of the Immaculate Conception, as well as priests from several religious orders, notably American Jesuits. Christian identity is thus important to the Ibaloy, but it has not erased the traditions the elders wish to preserve. After an initial meeting with Jazil Tamang and Lolo Melanio Bilit, an elder who was the president of the Elder Citizens Association at the time, we decided to organize a workshop with them. Many elders expressed their concern that their experience will remain untold to the youth. Lola Maximina Andizo, for instance, stressed on the importance of teaching children and remembering the traditions of the past. I quote her, "If you want to follow our culture and tradition so that it won't be forgotten, you have to teach it to your future children so that they would also teach it in the future. It is what our ancestors taught us long time ago, especially our parents who gave birth to us, and it is just follows us from generation to generation. What you are doing now, the workshops, is a good thing because you wanted to know all about our culture and traditions as Ibaloy. We have to remember them all." End of quote. The workshop took place in Upper Luacan, based on similar work conducted by myself and Dutch anthropologist Jarik Ooston with the Inuit in the Canadian Arctic. This methodology was developed to facilitate the transfer of knowledge between elders and youth. It contributes to the preservation and valorization of the elders' experiences and the styles and mode of thinking that this knowledge encompasses. The general purpose of a workshop is to record the richness of regional traditions and take all local variants into account. It does not aim to generalize the content, as each information is rooted in a location and bound to the speaker. So it is very specific. The format remains somewhat artificial, of course, as knowledge is always transferred more privately. But if everyone plays the game, a lot of information can be passed on between the generations. While the format is very simple, these workshops are not always easy to set up, and they require a lot of work. Once all the participants agree on the objectives of the activity and on the various topics that will be discussed, roundtables discussions can start, and each elder is invited to share her personal experiences. Special procedures are developed to ensure that each participant is allowed all the time he or she needs to explain their point of view and give an account of their own experience of a specific subject. The participants were seated on a large square table, speaking to each other. The elders were thus addressing their stories to the young they were facing. Interpreters Jazil Tamang and Glyceria Magapin made invaluable contributions to the workshops, as their work allowed us, the anthropologists, to interact with the elders. These 2 young Ibaloy demonstrated excellent capacity to facilitate this kind of activities, and we hope these workshops will now continue in the future and inspire others.
For each session on a topic, various roundtables are proposed in which all the participants can present their views or ask questions. Often, participants limit themselves to short comments or inquiries for more information. After each round, more extensive discussion can occur, which also continues outside of the workshop. All the sessions are video recorded to facilitate transcription and preserve the participants' words. During the sessions, the young participants, as well as the facilitators, ask questions hoping to trigger the elders' memories or develop a few points of interest. The information can by no means result in linear narratives. Memory and orality are dynamic and unpredictable, and we decided to retain the various discretions in the books. The interviews convey not only the traditions of the past, but also the styles of thinking and social interaction, expressing central values of the Ibaloi society. Also, for the elders, the key point is never as much to come to a common opinion as it is to come to an awareness of existing variations. As each elder has his or her own experience, it is essential that this knowledge is seen as related only to that particular elder. Once the source, that is the name of the elder, is lost, the knowledge loses its roots and becomes devoid of much value. This is why we always indicate which elder is speaking. Elder and youth were invited by Jazil Tamang and Glyceria Magapin. The participants were related to each other. This familiarity facilitated a relaxed context, which allowed the participants to discuss issues in depth, relying on their own personal experiences. Elders involved themselves wholeheartedly in the sessions. They enjoyed the opportunity to develop an agenda that reflected their interests in discussing and preserving Ibaloi traditions. They appreciated being challenged by the companions and given an opportunity to hear each other's stories. Elders were very knowledgeable and modest. They had no wish to speak about things of which they had no personal experience. They spoke with great sincerity. This methodology has also been experienced by our group with the Blaan of Mindanao and with the Alangan Mangan in Mindoro, with the Aita near Mount Pinatubo, as well as with the Tao of Orchid Island in Taiwan, and with 3 groups of Agalian in Mauritius. For the Alangan Mangyan and for the Blaan, Jazil, Tamang, and Glyceria Magapin joined us this time not as interpreters but as facilitators and anthropologists. As indigenous peoples themselves, they had pertinent questions that were directly connected with their own practices. They quickly identify relevant points, practices, rules, and rituals that were significant for the participants. The 2 groups with whom we organized the workshops enjoyed being asked by members of other indigenous groups and were encouraged to share their stories, knowing that the activity was successful among the Ibaloi. Each workshop was greatly appreciated by the elders and resulted in the publication of the verbatims and with an English translation. This methodology proved to be a success, for we are collaborating as a team of anthropologists and indigenous peoples. Together, we published 2 articles in anthropological journals such as Philippine Studies, that is in press, and in Bijdragen to Detail, a Dutch journal. We also edited a film together on the Krisheng Jawarai Batbat, the second funerals, and the cleaning of the bones of the deceased. We invited Jazil Tamang and Glyceria Magapin to Belgium so they could present their work and their own traditions to scholars and students who greatly enjoyed listening to these Ibaloi anthropologists. We believe that this close collaboration with indigenous peoples is key in doing research. Most importantly, methodology such as the workshop of intergenerational transfer of knowledge does put the participants' perspective ahead by giving the storyteller the opportunity to speak and be recorded in his own words and own name, not those of the researcher, and to receive back in the form of a published book the content of his telling. The elders and youth who participated in the discussions all agreed that the words and the names would be published in academic work. Anonymization, on the contrary, has the tricky effect of suppressing the participants' perspective, making them invisible and putting the researcher's perspective ahead. It is the antipode of our methodology, which valorized the local perspective. In fact, the elders emphasized on the importance of stating the name and locality of the speaker, as each person has a different experience, acknowledging that knowledge is not abstract but connected to a localized context and vary from one family to another. Participants declared that performing rituals together, eating the same food, was a mark of common trust. In fact, after each workshop, the proper rituals were performed, and several pigs, hen, and rooster were slaughtered and eaten by the group.
The workshop took place in the senior citizens' house. The sessions took place during the day, and the elders appreciated the round table format very much. New elders often joined the group over the course of the activity of their own will and interest, though their participation was not planned. On the final day during a fiesta, many visitors and the relatives of the participants joined the group. The discussions were illustrated through various performances by the participants throughout the workshop. For each workshop, one full day was reserved to the performance of ritual practices and a fiesta. The rituals were a main component of building trust between the participants, as everyone's intentions were shown before the kadaring, the ancestors, and the kabunyan, the gods. Meals and meriendas were prepared in situ and shared with all the participants. For the fiesta, pigs were butchered. Their skull and gallbladder were kept and placed on the roof of the elder's house and show that the correct rituals were conducted on that day. In 2019, we explored working on local maps and genealogies to better document the history of Upper Luacan. The youth detailed maps and family trees were drawn with the participants, and the elders greatly enjoyed showing the different places they experienced. This exercise also triggered their memories. This time, the workshop was interrupted by death ritual that took place in the community. Following the advice of the elders, we decided to stop the workshop and attend the burial. Elders as well as the mambunong, the one who knows the rituals, knew precisely how far they should go in sharing their stories. The younger people who attended learned much about their own family history and traditions of Ibaloy from Upper Luacan. They enjoyed discussing issues of the past, such as arranged marriages, social rules, and the resolution of conflicts, how to support a family and in the work in the mines and in the garden, sign and predictions, animals, spirits, dangers, sicknesses, and the various rituals the elders experience, discovering how much their elders managed to overcome hardships, including during the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. Elders emphasized that they wish to pass on their knowledge on their relatives and to the youth. Although they often abandoned their studies at an early age because they had to work, their knowledge is huge and rooted in practice. It cannot be qualified as traditional knowledge as it has been updated throughout their lives, depending on the various contexts. Their knowledge is not abstract but connected to the context and clearly future-oriented, intended to give perspective to younger generations so that they can be better equipped to face contemporary challenges. In the mines or in their oma, their gardens, elders develop many skills, and we are grateful to them for sharing their knowledge and practices. Obviously, only a very small part of their knowledge can be found in the books. Nonetheless, the volumes provide access to a rich body of information as well as to the context of their production. But even more so, the workshops create a new dynamic for joint research by Ibaloy and foreigners in an original and, we believe, a very fruitful perspective. Participants' questions triggered memories for the elders. Their experiences came to life again and have proven to be of great value to the younger generations. Readers will also notice that the elders are always very precise in their testimonies and indicate their sources carefully. The variety of their descriptions shows how much Ibaloy traditions vary from one place to another. It is also clear that many rituals have changed and that the past traditions are not always maintained. Yet, many rituals have kept their meaning and functions.
The elders appreciated this approach and agreed to move on. To make sure that the elders would be comfortable in sharing their stories, Jasil Tamang added that, "If you tell us all you know, it is better for us. But if you say that there are things that are not allowed to be discussed or to be shared, we will take this into account." In some places, like in Mindoro, where we went to organize a workshop, a few things that we were told to us were not supposed to be shared. For example, dalangan mangyan, and decided that there was a medicine which they would not discuss as they wanted it to use it just for them, so they want it to be protected. For us here, you can just tell us if a plant is a medicine for a cough and nothing else if you don't like to discuss the process. Whenever it is necessary, you can just tell us the information it is not supposed to be shared. Just like that. If you don't like to share certain information, just say so. But for the elders, knowledge has to be shared and passed on to the next generation. During about 3 days, they agreed to describe the substantial list of trees and plants. One of these issues brought by the elders was their own elder refused to share their stories with them. They used to say, "Just observe and watch, don't ask questions." But today, elders realize the importance of sharing their stories and answering to the questions of the youth. Lolo Edward Bante, a Mambunong, insisted on the lack of the youth participants to listen to their elders. For you, the young ones, you are very lucky because you can hear some advice from us, your elders. We do not know others who do not listen or who do not care about what we say. For those who are here now, you are very lucky because you listen to what we are saying or telling. You must listen carefully. You must remember our advice and put them in your heart until you become elders. Lolo Castro stated, "For us here in the community, we must follow our own culture and tradition. We must follow our own rules and laws. We must not follow the traditions of other people. These days, I always observe our tradition, and there are times when someone comes to our house and invite me to attend a ritual. And when we arrive at their house, they will ask me, what should we do with this? For me, I will teach what I learned and what I witnessed in the past about in our own rituals here in the community. I will not teach different things, and I will not teach things that I did not learn and witness myself. I will tell them, this is what I have seen in the past. This is how we do things as Ibaloy tribe. We will tell you the story of what we have seen personally. We will share it with you, the young ones, especially as our culture and traditions are still alive." We will let Lolo Melanio conclude our presentation with the following quote that he told in the workshop. "This information is what I heard and learned from the elders with whom I interacted and whom I cannot forget. I hope that the young generation will be committed to our culture and traditions so that it will be preserved and the next generation will learn from it."
Thank you to the collaborative team of Antoine, Frederic, Liceria, Jazil for sharing the results of the study. Now, as we approach the open forum and seeing that there's no question yet in the Q&A chat box, I'll probably start with my own questions. But to help the audience formulate their questions, let me just provide a brief summary of the presentations. Okay, the first presentation by Ryan Ginaran and Paul Noval analyzed the health communication program of the National Nutrition Council's 99.1 Radio Kipodan, a Nutriscuela community radio in Ifugao, Philippines. The second presentation, on the other hand, explores the methodology developed by two anthropologists and 2 Ibaloy speakers within their own community. So the study aimed to analyze the benefits and difficulties encountered in documenting the knowledge and perspectives of the Ibaloy. Okay, now if you have questions, you can type them in the chat box. You may also raise your hand. All right. To hit the ground running, let me just start with a rather simple and general question. Okay, and any one of the presenters can answer the question. You can take turns. You just turn on the camera or unmute yourself. So, since the theme of this conference is sustainable development goals, how do you relate the findings of your study to sustainable development or to the SDG? So, just some thoughts. We can probably start with Sir Ryan.
Hi. Yeah, good afternoon. Of course, directly health is one of the core SDG areas, and we're looking at strategies in increasing health literacy, because with higher health literacy, you would be expecting a corresponding increase in terms of better health seeking behavior. And with better health seeking behavior, they may be able to access services at the right time, at the right place, and with the right people. And this would contribute to better health outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Ryan. I believe Sir Paul is not in the room, but Sir Ryan is the. You can direct your questions for the presentation to Sir Ryan regarding the Nutri-Escuela or the community radio. Yeah, Jazil, Luceria, Antoine, any additions or thoughts?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I don't have any. I just wanted to introduce myself and apologize for Frédéric. He could not join the presentation today. He did not connect. I don't know what happened, but he could not connect to the presentation. So yeah, but at least we are myself and Jazil and Glyceria. So if you have any question, we'll be happy to answer and discuss.
Thank you. Yeah, Jazil or Luceria, anything you want to add? Okay, that's fine. That's fine if we don't have other questions. So yeah, the reason why we asked like on how to relate the study to sustainable development goals is, of course, this session is also about collaborative efforts within Indigenous communities and ensuring that continuity. Like in the case of the paper of Antoine, Frederic, and Glyceria, Jazil, they're talking about how the continuity of this Indigenous knowledge and practices. All right, so now I have another question since we don't have any question from the chat box or from the audience yet. Okay, your studies have shown success, at least on some level at some point, with in terms of Radio Kipodon's engagement with the community, in terms of how the workshops probably achieved the outcomes that you wanted to achieve to begin with. So my question is rather for the young scholars in the room, right? So there are junior scholars here and who want to probably do the same studies that you conducted. So my question is, what are the limitations of your studies? And do you have recommendations for addressing these limitations? So in essence, just to put it simply, like what can researchers who are interested in pursuing the same topics that you did, what can they explore further?
I think we all have different answers because of our different background and experience. So maybe I could start by giving an answer, and then my colleagues can also share about their own experience. Maybe from the academic level, it's important for junior scholars to mix, methodologies when they conduct research, and to just not abide by one rule or one methodology. For instance, I've been doing fieldwork, like long-term fieldwork, among the Ibaloy of Luacan with the Jazil family and this house family as well. So I've stayed there for a long time, learned the language, mingled with the people, participate in rituals, and all the thoughts that were shared in the workshops made other senses as well, as I could relate with what I heard and what I observed. Yeah, and I don't know if you want to share something else, Jazil or Glyceria?
Hi, hello everyone. With the workshop we conducted in our place, there are many young ones who are not well informed or about our culture and our tradition now, because they were more on gadgets now, so probably that's one of the problem in our place right now. So we tried to conduct this workshop for us to record the ideas, knowledge of elders in our community. So we will have our own uh, uh, how do you call that one, book as a reference in the future. So I think that's it.
And I think a good thing about these books is that each authors, the elders are named, so we know where the knowledge comes from, which village, which region. And I think that's a very important part of our epistemology. We don't want to generalize the knowledge or say everyone of this region do it like that way. No, what we want to do is to show that there are many variations at local levels, and we want to put the participants' perspective ahead, the local speakers. So I think it's a very important thing that we would like to emphasize today, especially for the junior researchers and students, to not go into generalizations. I think that's something that this methodology help with.
Thank you, Antoine. Ma'am Glyceria, Sir Ryan. Yeah, do you want to add anything?
Okay.
Sir Ryan.
Yeah. As a message for our young scholars as well as students. Now, one model of the Nutri-Squela is actually SUC based. It's based in State University or college, but this one, the one we studied, is a model that's based in the LGU, and I think the LGU academe link should be explored further, because we've been seeing a lot of innovations in the other model, which is the SUC based, considering that there are students there as well as faculty who both do research and practice, and that continuously feeds into the creative operations of the Nutri-Squela, which is based in the university. So for those based in the LGUs, one still LGU and academe together with students partnership is possible. For example, in the Nutri-Squela, the Benguet State University Development Communication department conducts immersions there for days and weeks to also assist in incapacitating the personnel of the radio station, and they also do their hands-on internship there to help create more contextualized and localized information for the target audience. So that's where LGU academe partnerships are very relevant, and for young scholars, all of this information, all of this data, all of this research is for naught if it is not directed to the community. So there are many problems in our community There are many interventions as well. These interventions, though, are not perfect and it needs continuous updating, such that this is where your role, our role as researchers can come in understanding why there is still a persistence of the problem, even with such interventions, so that with the creative juices of you, the junior scholars, we can innovate more and improve the services for our communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sir Ryan. Now we have a lot of time for questions, and I'd like to direct your attention to the chat box. We have one question from Eric Joyce Grande. Thank you for the comprehensive presentations. I address my question to both sets of researchers. With the work that you have been doing, has there been any indigenous or local notion or concept or model of collaboration that you believe inspired your respective initiatives? Okay, so anyone who wants to start, probably Antoine, Jazil, this area first. So has there been an indigenous or local model of collaboration that inspired your initiative?
I don't think there's been a model, or we just developed this work has been tried and tested in the Canadian Arctic with the Inuit people by Frédéric Legrand and his deceased colleague Yaik Oustan. And we have tried it and adapted it to the Philippines context and develop it with the Ibaloy. But perhaps what I could say today about this is that a form of trust was developed through rituals, something of course, we couldn't think of in advance as we started to discover Philippines, and notably through the rituals and the consumption of the pig, well, the killing and the consumption of the pig. So I think a lot of, the relationship, the trust between the participants that sometimes were new faces to each other, developed through the rituals. So I think that's something that made it also successful, the workshops, that in each workshop that we organized, we had a time for the rituals, for opening and for closing the workshop. And so I think that could be, we could say that it has been a local notion or even model that made the research successful, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what the others have to say about this.
In addition to Antoine, what we did when we started our workshop is we first wrote letters to our elders and to our LGU, of course, so that they will be informed that a workshop would take place in the community. So we asked the elders first if they want this kind of workshop. So they were very excited actually in the first when we told them that there would be workshop like this that we are planning to do in the future. So we started this workshop in year 2017, but our collaboration started 2016 and 2017. So I think because we are part of the community, the elders easily trusted us. So that's maybe that's the because of collaboration. So that's why our workshop was made successfully. Thank you.
Thank you, Jazil. This area, Sir Ryan, Sir Ryan, anything to add? Okay, I believe. Okay, that's it. Okay, Sir Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah. So on local notion or concepts or models of a collaboration, no? Let me say that there are local notions of collaboration, and that is very much evident also in the way the radio station is operated, because this is a non-partisan as well as partnership-based project, no, between a national government agency, an LGU, and the LGU can only depend on its constituents and its people. So partnership was really seen here. The collaboration was really seen here, and of course the concept of teamwork or collaboration in Ifugao is known as badang or batchang, no? And also everywhere in the Cordilleras, you'll see these concepts of collaboration spoken in so many in many ways and in many terms, no? In every community in the Cordilleras, you have an equivalent of the word for bayanihan or volunteerism or collaboration. Example, in Ibaloy, there in Duacan, I am an Ibaloy myself, no? We call it aduyon, right? And in Benguet Kankanai, we call it aluyon. In Kalanguya, we call it dinada. A lot of other groups would say it's inatang, og-og-4, og-ogbo, tagnawa, binulig, abuyog, kumon, ulop, bataris, galatis, gama, langay, saranay. All of these terms are pertaining to collaboration, and perhaps a contribution that young scholars can make is try to identify how these models of collaboration in each specific area, as the other group has been mentioning, how it has evolved over time, and what these terms of collaboration mean for everyone. What conditions, because these scenarios and instances of collaboration or teamwork or bayanihan are very situational in nature. And across time, it has been evolving. The meanings also and applications have been changing. And this is something that we can empirically drill down into as young researchers. How specifically these modes of collaboration evolve, and in what situation, in what conditions, in what applications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I hope we're learning a lot from this session. We're getting tips and advice from the researchers themselves. So I hope that answers your question, Sir Eric. And let me just read the comment of Sir Eric here. I asked about the indigenous or local concept or notion of collaboration, because when researchers engage in the same with an indigenous community, researchers must deliberately revisit and articulate or re-articulate their epistemologies, ontologies, and methodologies. We definitely agree with this point, and well taken, point well taken, sir. Now we have two other questions. One is in the Q&A chat box from Karin Bangkoy, and we'll reserve that for later. For now, I'll accommodate the question of Jersky Duria, who has been raising his hand since earlier. So Jersky, go ahead. Why don't you ask your question live?
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. I thought about this because of the role of researchers or academic researchers on doing researches, which was stated by the panelists, both panelists. I just thought about this. Are they integrating in their workshops or collaboration the capacity building, like teaching the IP communities or the elders or even the young on documenting or doing research on themselves? Is there any collaboration or workshop have done like that? Because just like I just remember what Ma'am Victoria Corpus, the Holy Corpus stated, that we should look at the IPs not just as beneficiaries of the research or participant of the research, but we should look at them as partners of research. So I just a thought on that, because just like what Sir Ryan stated, it's the continuity of doing research for young academicians. But at the end of the day, we are capacitating them by doing workshops are they integrating such workshop or such collaboration, such as teaching them basic documentation or basic research skills, just like that? I am just wondering po. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone who wants to start? And this is more related to the presentation, the second presentation. So, and to win, Jazil, Seria, go ahead.
Do you want to start, Jazil or Lisaria?
No, it's okay. You can start.
Okay, it's up to you. Okay, so I can just start and so how do I start this? I think the workshop in itself is intended to benefit both the researcher and the local community because well, first the participants, and now I'm talking because we conducted the workshop among the Ibaloy, but also among other groups, among the Alangan Mangan, with Aitas, with Blaan of Mindanao. And each time the participants appreciated a lot sharing their own stories, but also listening to that of the others, sometimes coming from neighboring regions. So there has been always a lot of empowerment through these activities. And sorry, I have a bit of an internet problem. And the results of the workshop were each time published into books that were transcribed in the local language, in Nabaloy, for instance. And these books serve the local people. For instance, we gave the books to schools in Itogon. I think Justin Lisa can say a word about this. And so the books are published in the local language and also translated into English to have access to a broader audience. So yeah, that's what I can share.
Okay, so in addition, it's about if we integrated youth in our workshop. So during our workshop, we did not only invite elders to join the workshop, we also invited youth to join us. So from all the workshops we did, there are few youths because we cannot invite all of them to listen in the workshop. We invited few, so they directly heard all the stories of the elders in our workshop. So we take turns. The young ones would ask questions to the elders, and the elders would answer the questions asked to them. Not only the questions they asked, they also initiatively shared all their experiences related to the questions. So I think that's about the integration for the youth. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Jersey's question is pointing to a very interesting situation, right? Like, how do we make sure that Indigenous peoples are not just beneficiaries of knowledge, which is in itself not a bad thing, but how do we build capacities for them as well? So I think the presenters were able to answer this question to some extent, right? Like, we give them the books or what's produced out of these workshops, but at the same time, we train them facilitation skills. They also get to ask the elders questions. So probably before we leave that question, I'd like to ask Sir Ryan if you have anything you'd like to add. So her question is, good afternoon. This is a general question for all presenters. This is from, again, I believe the connection has been lost there somehow. The youth are obviously a vital component in Indigenous collaborative innovations, whether this is about health literacy or passing on cultural heritage. May I ask if there have been aspects of your studies that have revealed why youth do or do not participate or engage in these initiatives? So yeah, the lack of participation from the youth, okay, in these initiatives. Okay, maybe this time we can start with Sir Ryan. Go ahead, please.
Okay, hello. Yeah. Our objectives did not touch on that. However, we saw participation of youth leaders as well as IP youth leaders in the radio station. In a sense, they were resource persons, because they were called to share experiences, etc. So they are open. I mean, the radio station is open to youth participation. Although, yeah, some thoughts about why youth participation is not that strong is that, one, if we look at the Community Radio Council, it's not youth dominated. And also what we observed is it's still top down in strategic planning. We need more participation, especially of sectors that are our targets. And yeah, there's still that thought, perhaps culturally, of more patriarchal, more elderly, more expert leaning in terms of councils and governance bodies. So I guess there should be stronger youth participation, especially from the start, from the formulation of a research or a project, from the planning stage all the way to its evaluation. And that should ensure and create more opportunities for the youth and give them more confidence to participate in both research and projects. Thank you.
Okay. Antoine, Jazil, Sarah, anything? So how about, as you mentioned earlier, Jazil, right? Like, you cannot invite everyone or all of the
Yes.
all members or part of the youth sector. So yeah, go ahead.
With the in the case with our workshop, before the elder when we listen to the stories of elders before, if we compare it today, before, the elders do not allow children to touch, for example, about our culture, right? So they are not allowed to touch, or they are not allowed to ask the elders why are these things happening in our community. That was before. So if I compare it now, elders are more open. So the young ones actually are there are young ones who are actually interested in listening to elder stories, and there are also young ones who do not want to listen because of other interest. So especially now that we have our gadgets, I think that's the number one, no, I don't know if it's number one or most of the problem for the young ones today, why they are not uh interested in participating or engaging in our workshop or learning about culture and tradition. So that's what I observe. uh that's what I observe. Thank you.
Anything to add? Okay. So yeah, our researchers talked about different factors that contribute to this non-participation. So in terms of interest, in terms of their divided attention because of technology, as Jazzy has pointed out. Now we still have time for questions and Seeing that there's none or no more questions from the chat box, I encourage participants to just raise your hand or to state your question verbally if you would like to. Okay, let me just ask Sir Ryan, okay, because we've talked about these collaborative efforts and we've talked about youth participation. We've also dealt with the transfer of knowledge from the elders to younger members of the community. Let's try to focus on Sir Ryan and Paul's presentation on Radio Kipodan, okay, the community radio. So my question is, how do we make sure that, or how are we sure that the success of, or the health outcomes achieved in the study, or the findings for that matter, can be attributed exclusively to the success of Radio Kipodan? So perhaps how do we make sure that it is the medium or that really contributed, or that really that really achieved the health outcomes or the development outcomes that we wanted to achieve?
Yeah, I think that's subject to another more intensive study on assessment. Yeah, that's true. And there are methodologies that could connect that correlation or attribution, but what we did was not that type of impact assessment. What we just utilized was the most significant change model, which tried to generate anecdotal experiences of our key informants, right, on how this affected, on how the radio station affected their beliefs, etc., that connected to their actions. Although, yeah, that should be subject to another study. Having said that, there are a lot of factors definitely that contributes to nutrition improvement. No, we've seen a decrease in the underweight of children in Lagawe, and intensively there's a lot of intersectoral work in the nutrition program. Actually, Ifugao is second in the region in terms of the vibrance and how should I say this, innovations, no, in nutrition program strategies, no, next to Baguio City, also in terms of impact. So it's when we discuss nutrition, it's really a big, complex, complicated thing with a lot of factors involved. So yeah, we cannot of course attribute this specifically to the radio station, this type of impact, but we understand that this has contributed at least to raising health awareness through health communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Ryan. Indeed, the anecdotal experiences will say a lot about the use of this technology. Although that's a note for researchers, right? Like, how do we look at technology in a more holistic way, not just like its positive aspects, like it contributes to certain outcomes, but also its possible limitations. So as Sir Ryan said, that can be a tip for future study. Okay. Other questions we have for the presenters? Okay. Are we now ready to end this session? We still have time. Maybe let's make the most out of this time, because we still have 9 minutes before 2:30, and we can still accommodate your questions. Okay. Of course, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of Professor Mendoza, who's here with us in the chat room. Yeah, and our audience who have joined us earlier this morning. Thank you for joining us today again. Okay. Seeing that there's no question yet, I'll just probably ask all our presenters to give like their closing or concluding remarks about their studies or anything that they'd like to see out of future studies, or what could be the next step for this inquiry or studies that you conducted. And yeah, essentially that. So maybe some closing parting words for the participants. What can come out of a study like this in the future? What can be? Go ahead. Anyone can start. Maybe let's start with Antuin, Jazil, or Luceria. Have anything?
Okay. Uh, wait. Sorry. Okay. With our workshop, we hope other, especially the young ones, they would be interested to listen to elders' stories. Anytime, maybe if they would visit their own elders in their community, because they would learn a lot from them, like what we did in our workshop. We learned a lot. We watch what we did not learn from the schools, because we cannot learn everything in school. We have to learn it within our community. So I encourage the youth, the young ones, to initiatively join what are the activities of the communities, not only about culture and traditions, but all activities that they can learn from it. So for the researchers, maybe we could look into other things, like how would we invite or encourage the young ones uh to participate, so that uh they would be empowered, or they would have more knowledge. So I don't know how, or maybe there would be time in the future, someone or anyone can wait can do it, or ourselves, we don't know. So that's it, I think, for me. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Before I ask Antuin or this area, there's one participant here who is interested to know where they can find the books, especially the book that covered the ritual. So maybe you can add that
Uh
address that.
yeah, we have e-copies of the book. So, but you have to download it via WeTransfer. I think Antoine has it, so you can directly message Antoine, or me also. You can direct message me. I can send you the link where you can download it, or the books. I have books, but it's very limited. So we in Itogon, in our municipality, we already distributed one copy each for all elementary and high school. So I don't know if the students read them, but we have books. I have a few books in our place right now. Uh, you can borrow it. For example, just message me for the copy. We have both in Ibaloy and English.
Okay. I think Sir Antoine also sent a link in the chat box. You can click that
Yeah.
link.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the official link of the books, because they were printed in Belgium, and we also had local printing in Baguio, but these were for the schools of Itogon. We have copies here, but the problem is to transport them to the Philippines. And since I'm very doubtful about the opening of the borders anytime soon for foreigners, I have no idea when I will be able to go back to the Philippines. But that is another problem. I think Jazil concluded very well, and I think there are still many works to be done, not only with the Ibaloy, but with many other groups as well.
Okay. From this area, you want to say anything? Okay, Sir Ryan, go ahead, please.
Yeah, to all our researchers out there, I'm very sure that you are very passionate in trying to generate knowledge and contribute to knowledge gaps. And we all know that knowledge does not exist in a vacuum. These are all for the benefit of the people. And to cite a statistic, it takes about 17 years for one research to be translated into a product or something that can be useful for the community. Let's try to shorten that. For example, um, put forth some recommendations that are very practical and also doable. And we also do that as our form of academic responsibility, and such that we generate the whole link from generation of the information to practical application for the benefit of the Cordillera people and the communities around us. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jadzil, Glaceria, Antoine, Frederic, Ryan, and Paul, who has not been able to join us for a very inspiring session. We learned a lot, and I'm sure the researchers out there got tips on what they could do for future studies and inquiries. And for